You're listening to Forge Theater Labs,
a podcast devoted to exploring theater history. Where does that idea come from?
concepts in storytelling.
Is anything that original?
Isn't that just an assumption?
And the creation of theater from behind the scenes.
How do they even do that?
This is Forge Theater Labs.
History, innovation, perspective.
Welcome to Forge Theater Labs. I'm Josh N Hsu, your host, and tonight we're introducing one of Maine's newest theater companies, but one that isn't simply producing plays. SecondStory Theatre Company emerged from a belief that theater can spark dialogue, deepen community, and invite audiences into conversations that continue long after the curtain call. Through their work together in the community, they discovered a shared philosophy about how theater can serve Maine through accessibility, artistic rigor, and meaningful engagement. This is at the heart of what truly drives SecondStory's work. Tonight, I'd love to explore not only the company they're building, but the ideas they're building it around. Most theater companies introduce themselves through a season announcement, a list of production dates and venues. I'd rather begin somewhere else. Every theater company, new or established, starts with a belief about what theater is for. Before there are productions, there's a philosophy. Before there's an audience, there is an idea about what kind of community might gather around the work. It was this shared conviction that theater should be a space for dialogue, connection, and civic engagement that helped SecondStory emerge. Throughout tonight, I would like us to revisit one key question consistently. What does it mean to build a theater company around a philosophy rather than just focusing on a season? As we discuss productions, rehearsal rooms, leadership, and community, I encourage you, listener, to keep asking how our choices reflect the broader vision of an organization and how they can positively influence and uplift the community we serve. So first, I'd love to introduce three members of the board of SecondStory. First is Rachel Jane Henry. Rachel, you're a Maine native who studied vocal performance at Boston University, spent 6 years in New York City, and then intentionally returned home to become deeply involved in Southern Maine's theater community. You've described yourself as someone who believes in the unique connecting power of shared live art. How have your experiences of leaving Maine and returning influenced your journey as a theater maker and community builder?
Well, they've really influenced a lot, and I'm trying to narrow it down to a sensitive amount of time that I can talk about this. I studied classical music in college, and it's very, very strict and intense. And it honestly, I ran away from my creative side and my artistic side for most of the time I was in New York. I dabbled here and there. I sang in a opera trip hop down tempo band. That was kind of as much as I did. So it wasn't until I moved back to Maine that I rediscovered theater. And it I think that the anxiety and the intensity that my college training set into me as an artist, it really finding theater again here in this community, in the Portland community, being welcomed into that and allowing myself to find that easy creativity, that easy joy, honestly, joy, was life-changing for me. And it was a whole part of my soul that I'd forgotten about, that I really tamped down. And I think that the last 14 years being here in Portland and getting more and more involved in the community and interacting with a lot of different types of people with different backgrounds coming into to theater is so inspiring. And I kind of want the joy that it brings me. I would love to be able to share to whomever is open.
I love
really.
that. And we have talked so many times about that on this podcast, about sort of, formative education for theater makers that, maybe whether you went to a conservatory or a liberal arts university, it did feel like they were putting you through the ringer right? Over and over again, traumatizing you
Mhm.
so that you could make good theater, but then sort of ripping the joy out of it at the same time. And so it really resonates with me that it's so important that when we do theater to remind ourselves to bring joy into that space.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for
Mhm.
sharing.
Mhm.
Next up is Ian Mayer Lindsay. Ian Mayer is a staple of the Portland theater scene. I am genuinely intrigued by how your departure from Maine and subsequent return have influenced your development as a theater maker and community builder. Your artistic journey, Ian Mayer, goes far beyond directing. It clearly demonstrates your profound dedication to community care, accessibility, and social justice. Your initiatives such as Second Story, the Ensemble of Color, and your advocacy for Indigenous sovereignty and cultural learning truly resonate with me. Um, when you think about your work as an artist, organizer, and collaborator, do these feel like separate parts of your life, or are they all expressions of the same creative philosophy?
Thanks, Josh. I definitely feel like they're all part of the same creative philosophy. We are deeply complex and layered individuals, humans are, and that is part of what I think makes theater so amazing is telling these stories of these deeply complex, flawed, beautiful humans that bring their full selves to the story. And so I think it's very important to, when you're making this work, to also bring your full self to the picture, whether, that's your organizing work, your um, artistic work, your, 9 to 5 day job. Like all of that is just informs, I think, the way that you can approach theater and just make it more whole, if that makes sense, like just more round and and whole.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think there is this fear for people who have that 9 to 5, who have that separate, aspect to their lives that, you know, telling people that they do theater will somehow impact their day job, right? Or perhaps talking about, oh, you're one of those people, like those weird theater people. And I'm like, yes, I am. I am.
I will say it does impact my day job in that I tend to then get volunteered for public speaking things.
Same.
Yes.
Of course, of course,
Yeah.
of course. Uh, Last but not least, we also have Jess Libby. Jess, as one of the founding members of Second Story, you've helped transform an exciting artistic idea into an actual organization. You're very active in the local theater community as an actor, a director, and scenic artist. You're currently playing King Herod in Jesus Christ Superstar at the time of this recording, and will be directing The Hobbit in December, both which are at Portland Players, a community organization. And so I'd love for us to explore not only artistic vision tonight, but also the building something that can last and grow. And so I thought I'd ask you this. Please help us finish this sentence. We knew we had to start a theater company when?
When the same group of people kept on talking about needing to create something together. It's short answer. And we kept on having ideas, bouncing ideas off each other, kind of daydreaming about opportunities that we wish were there for us. And I'd say mostly for the community, wanting another avenue for our peers and fellow artists to continue to bring their art to audiences.
So, Ian Mayer, I'd love to jump to you and say, what did you recognize in each of the other board members that made you think, these are the people that I want to build something with?
Well, I was the late one to the party. I came in after everyone had been kind of meeting for a while and doing readings with each other. And then there was the idea to do a staged reading of the Laramie Project, and they needed one more person to fill out the cast. And I had either worked with or knew of almost everyone that was involved, at one point or another. And so Tommy Waltz, our president, reached out to me and said, we'd love to offer you this opportunity to be a part of this group while we're doing this staged reading. And I, at the time, um, had come to a place where I had decided that I might not continue with theater, that theater might not be the right place for me. Mostly a whole host of reasons. I think a lot of organizations are stuck in this mindset of scarcity, urgency, and are thinking more about the bottom line than or the next season rather than the people that are involved. And as someone who has chronic health issues, I could not continue producing in the way that theaters in the area demand actors to produce, in the way that they demand actors to give of their bodies. I could not do that healthily anymore. And I really felt that because of that, there wasn't a place for me. And so I had been grieving this loss of this community and this part of my life that really was, the thing that brought me joy aside from my 9 to 5 cubicle job. When Tommy approached me and I said, I am really interested, but this is what I'm struggling with. And Tommy said, great, like that. We love to have these open conversations, these dialogues. We hear you. We want to create a space where everyone feels welcome, where everyone feels that they can voice their needs, and where we can have a discussion as a group to make sure that we're addressing those needs, so that we're really creating this beautiful container to hold everyone that's involved, and to really check in and make sure that we are all there for each other. And when I heard that and heard of the people involved, I was like, you know what? I think I can give this one more shot. And it has been amazing. Everyone in this group is so caring and so just profoundly present and there for everyone else. And I feel like we have a really great dynamic where we can have difficult conversations, we can hold each other accountable, and we can learn and grow together while also having an amazing, ridiculously hilarious and fabulous time. And so, everyone on the board is like that. And I'm just so honored that I was asked to join Laramie Project, and that now here I am with Second Story.
Rachel, I'd like to take it a step back for a moment, just because I realize that I've introduced the three of you, but you are part of a board. And so there are other people who are not present this evening. Tell us about the rest of the board, and what does each person do? How does it all sort of come together?
Sure. So you already referenced Tommy Waltz, who is our board president. He is also a therapist and social worker by day, and those talents are incredibly wonderful to have around. And he's just a fantastic leader. He really he knows how to, as Ian Mayer just said, really welcome create a safe space and help navigate those conversations, or just create space for those conversations. And then let's see, our vice president is Corey Osborne. And our secretary is Sarah Cash. She's our realist as well, I would say. And
As all treasurers
Sean,
are.
Yes, yeah. And Jess Libby is our secretary, actually. Did I say Sarah, our secretary? I've done that.
Yes,
There's
she's
our treasurer.
Yeah.
And sorry about that. And Sean Sr. is also on our board as well.
Another
And we all
realist.
kind of wear various hats. Yes, he's also a realist, I would say.
Well, fantastic. I love sort of the balance of the crew that you've put together. So before we talk more about the organization itself, let's talk about sort of understanding the philosophy that made it necessary. And I think that I want to sort of take it back to that origin story, right? Every company begins because something feels missing, not because other organizations aren't doing good work, but because there's a possibility that isn't being explored. So, Rachel, I'm going to turn to you again. The Laramie Project seems to have been the catalyst, as Ian Mayer referenced. This is a very well-established play. This is a play that's been done many times before. Why did that piece, again, feel relevant to our community at that time?
It really came about sort of naturally, I would say. We were meeting and just reading scenes and plays together as a group. And Tommy, I think, brought the Laramie Project. He had the script. And so we were like, let's just do a full reading of it. And so over 2 meeting sessions, we did a full reading. And after each session, we stopped and really had to decompress and talk through what we just read. It's a profoundly heavy and real show. Um, and as we were talking about it, I realized I have a distinct memory of when the event happened in real life. I was a freshman in high school. I was active in the Gay Straight Alliance. I'd been like my family had been very active in the AIDS fundraising and movement in our area. Um, and I remember the impact of the event just to the people in my community, in my immediate family and community. But I'm also one of the older members of the crew, and everyone else didn't quite have those exact memories. And it just was it was very impactful to every single person in the room in different ways. And I think one of the things that really called to me about relating it to our current time and the time when we did the reading is um, the oh gosh, I had this worded so well in my brain earlier today. I'm sorry. uh, is kind of the way that it captures. It uses literal quotes of every single voice or every kind of pocket of community of Laramie, including like the awful, hard, bigoted, misunderstood, or the ones that are misunderstanding, misrepresenting the situation, and it stops you. It it makes you stop and listen to the things that you understand and sympathize with, and the things that you really don't understand and sympathize with, and you it counters your knee jerk reaction and it forces you to pay attention. And I think that is a type of discourse that is not common in our current world. And I think it's that kind of discourse that allows people to open their minds and hearts, and even if it's just like a minor thing, it creates a crack in the wall.
I love that sort of observation, which is in
Mm.
order for discourse to occur, we need to be able to stop and listen. And creating theater that makes that possible affects change, right? It's not necessarily that we're like, we said to go change, so therefore you will go change. But
Yeah.
it's the moment of stopping and listening. So thank you for sharing that, because
Yeah.
absolutely that's exactly how I feel about that piece. You know,
Mhm.
at what point after this reading, this performance, did it start to feel like, oh, we need to build something around that kind of discourse? We need to build something around that fills in that kind of institution. Ian Mayer, any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think building off of the listening piece, when we saw how many people showed up for that reading, we also had a talk back or more like a dialogue after the show and seeing how many folks were engaged. And there were several folks who were older in the audience who, were well into their adulthood when this happened and sharing their stories of, growing up at that or being an adult at that time, and just their elder queer life stories and really having that discussion in that format. And I think afterwards hearing how much of an impact it had on folks. Like we just kept hearing after the show more and more things like that was so amazing. Oh my gosh, we'd love you to do something like that again. That just felt so good to hold that space and to have those conversations. And I think getting that feedback, seeing that response, we really realized there's something here. There is a need that the community has that we could easily, continue fulfilling by having these sorts of performances, these sorts of engaging discussions.
Mm.
Jess, so I think this is a great place for me to go to you and go, please tell us your mission at Second Story. What is your mission? Based on that gap, based on that need, what is your
Yes.
mission?
Our mission is to, and I just have to say, my two cohorts are two of the best spoken people that I could be I could be with. So I'm gonna try to hold a candle to them. Um, Second Story mission is to bring opportunities of art and products of art to the community that might not otherwise see the light of day or be chosen for, a season at one of the bigger theaters. Maybe pieces that people haven't even heard of. We've already uncovered many pieces I've never ever been aware of. And that's part of the immense fun of it. And to create things that spark conversations like the Laramie Project. Like a true piece like that just like sits in your body afterwards. And to be doing that for, I think we've touched on this, but doing that for other people in the audience to spark that kind of fire and interest and emotion.
Absolutely.
Also,
So,
um,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say about our name being Second Story. One of the reasons we named it is because we started reading plays on the second story of Tommy Waltz's apartment building. But then it turned into like, this is our second time telling a story. We're telling new stories. We're transforming stories for someone else to hear it in a different way.
We're using second spaces sometimes too. We're since we're a nomadic group, we can have a lot of flexibility as to where we meet, where we gather, where we put on different forms of pieces of art. And so it's that flexibility, that nimbleness is really lovely as well, I think.
That's great. So, how do those values then actually influence the play decision, right? Like, is there a metric of, you know what, this play has been done, we can't do this. This is not us, right? Like, what are those sort of like ways that you land upon play selection for the coming year, for what you want to do next?
I mean, I think there's the ordinary, boring reasons of, okay, is anyone else doing this show this season? Because we don't want to have duplicative shows, and can we afford to put this show on? So once you get past those two very boring, mundane, but necessary hurdles, I think it's really looking at what is the story that's being told? Is it something that can either resonate with our community or something that our community hasn't seen before that will really spark conversation, bring something new, open their eyes to something new? What are the characters that are involved? The casting. Casting is a big thing that we think about as well. And how can we expand casting beyond the cookie cutter things that we see currently? So a lot of those were what we took into consideration when looking at plays.
And so when you, let's say, choose a play, does that sort of inform how you might engage the community, choose your venue, choose, right, who you're directing that play to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to foreshadow later conversation topics, but the uh, Ian Mayer surrounding the upcoming production of Lizzie that they'll be directing has uh, that there's a lot of things around that show that are specifically shaped because of the show that tie into either the theme of the show or a funny like side joke play on axes or other names. And I think that show especially is one that you can really like lean into reaching out to certain communities or partnering with other organizations in the community, and the ambiance of the space that we chose, things like that.
Amazing. Does the community engage you because of also the work that you're choosing to? Like, are you thinking about it in a different context, like reversing that flow? Like, do they also engage you in a different context?
As far as choosing plays and stuff, we actually now are at a point where we open the season to potential directors submitting ideas. So now we have an idea of like things the community are interested in bringing. And so then how does that apply? How does that, fit into our mission? Is this something we can put on? That kind of stuff. So we do have kind of input, and it's not just us picking the plays.
Oh, incredible. Incredible. I love that idea of like, taking pitches, making sure that it's part of the system. So it actually is speaking to the community. Um, like obviously that sounds so fascinating for all of those sort of nascent directors, emerging directors, getting to be able to pitch to a company is very exciting. And so I think, before we sort of transition into our break right now, I just sort of want to start with you. What does the phrase second story symbolize for each of you? And, where do you imagine the company's commitment going to sort of fulfill that symbolization, so to speak?
Retelling a story, I think is the root of it for me. You can do so much with a play. It's just endless what theater can do, and collaboration with the community and integration. For me, I hope that's where we continue, working with all kinds of different pockets of the artistic community.
For me, second story, I think it's one that can really represent a lot of different things, which is another thing I really like about the name is that, as I mentioned already, like second spaces, where you're going into unique spaces. I love to go into even more unique spaces. A second way to look at things. I mean, you could take a second and pause and listen. Like you could go so many places with second story. And I hope as we continue to grow and evolve and find our identity within the community, that is something we are known for, telling stories that are not necessarily heard or seen a lot in our other community because we have a different model. We're not trying to like keep a 150-year-old theater afloat. We have that nimbleness to really be mission driven.
Yeah, I would just echo both of what Jess and Rachel said, and I think when I think about second story, the thing that comes to mind immediately for me is this idea of second chances. I feel like becoming a part of second story has given me a second chance at creating, building, doing theater in a healthy way in a group that is caring for each other and that is really bringing joy. And I also think that giving people this idea of a second chance, we're very open to getting feedback, to being in dialogue with the community. We're only human. We're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. That's part of being human. What's important is that when we hear about those, that we are in dialogue with that, we learn from it, we move forward, we engage, we repair what harm we can repair, and we make sure that we're not doing it again, building upon that and continuing to build and grow and giving folks a chance, people with the opening the director submission up, like people who might not have ever felt like they could direct a play because all the theaters that were available are all these well-established theaters, but giving people that second chance, that opportunity to try something that they may never have tried but have always wanted to in a space that is supportive and safe for them to do.
What a wonderful description from each of you. I really appreciate that. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll sort of talk a little bit more about that artistic identity, that artistic practice, and I want to sort of deep dive into all of these conversations a little bit more. You're listening to Forge Theater Labs. I'm Josh Hsu. We'll be right back.
At Forge Theater Labs, we're building bold, imaginative theater, supporting new artists, new stories, and new ways of experiencing performance. We're proud to share that Forge Theater Labs is now a sponsored project of Fractured Atlas, which means your donations are tax deductible and directly support the creation of this podcast, live tapings, and artist-driven projects. If our work has inspired you, made you think, or brought you closer to the theater community, we invite you to help keep it going. You can make a donation by visiting forgetheaterlabs.com for our link to our Fractured Atlas page. Every contribution, big or small, helps us forge new pathways for artists and audiences alike. Thank you for being part of our community.
Welcome back to Forge Theater Labs. I'm Josh Hsu, and we're talking with the board members of Second Story, Rachel Henry, Ian Mayer Lindsay, and Jessica Libby. Earlier, we talked about the ideas that inspired Second Story. And so I'd love to look at how these ideas become tangible in the plays that Second Story chooses, the rehearsal rooms that y'all create, the programs you develop, and the experiences audiences ultimately have. If philosophy is the foundation, I'd love to sort of jump into the architecture. We talked a lot about Laramie Project already, and so I thought I'd sort of pivot Ian Mayer to sort of what you've expanded to. You've expanded beyond fully produced work with stage readings like What You Leave. From the organization's perspective, what role do staged readings play?
Well, I think they play a role of like bringing us back to our roots for Second Story. That's where we started, and so it's just a good reminder of where we came from, and also. I think staged readings, especially with What You Leave, which was a new work by a playwright, Danny Martinek, who is also an actor, New York-based playwright and actor. And so I think the stage reading like, really served as an opportunity to give space to those playwrights or those writers who might not have as many opportunities to see their work read aloud and to see a produced reading of their work and to really give them that space so that they can continue to get the information they need from that to continue to develop and go on and create amazing work. And I think that's one of the main reasons we looked at What You Leave with Danny is really being able to provide them a space where they can continue to develop this amazing play that they have and just continue getting that feedback from having it in front of live audiences. So you can really foster that growth.
I'm going to lean into that for the moment, for that What You Leave. And I'd like to sort of take a deep dive. What happened after the stage reading? Where is Danny with that project today? Where does that live today? Where is it going? Because oftentimes awarding someone a staged reading as a playwright can be a very rewarding experience. But then the next step is always like, where does that go? And so if you could share a little bit more about that, like.
Yeah. So it started as a shorter play that Danny had written for like an educational piece to be performed, adult education in libraries. And in conversations with Danny, we felt like it could really be developed into a full length play. So that we worked on that with getting it ready for this full length production staged reading. And since then, Danny got a lot of really great information from that, working with the actors, working with myself and the Second Story from the production side, seeing what the audiences had to say, what their reactions were. And they've done some additional work on the play, cleaning up some areas, tightening up some other things. And the next step is to have another staged reading in New York City. I believe that's what they are working up to getting organized right now at the moment. And then with the goal of, that hopefully being like the last kind of development piece and moving on to a full production after that.
That is so exciting that it began with Second Story. That is such a credit to the supportive nature that you provide your writers and your community. I also want to pivot to sort of your other initiatives supporting local community, which is Stage Time. You've created sort of this interesting place where you open your doors for scene study and community participation. Jess, can you tell us a little bit about that program? Give us an overview of that program, what inspired it, and, we can sort of go from there.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's a throwback to seriously like where we started. We just brought plays to the table and would read scenes or tiny little like one acts and just have so much fun. And as an actor, it's so fun to just go outside your comfort zone and just play or read any wide range of characters that there's really there are no stakes. No risks. You just can just be there among your peers and no one is auditioning, no one's judging you. Everyone's in their own little world, really, but sharing it with everyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's just so fun. We've had a couple people that have very little experience show up and read these, I mean, sometimes like ridiculous scenes and just have so much fun. We bring a wide range of like the absurd to a classic like Steel Magnolias. And that is just like the meat and potatoes of what is so fun for people who like to play a character.
I want to take it back for a second because I want to remind our audiences where stage time typically is. And so where do you typically host it? Because it's not like a fun rehearsal room.
Right.
Where do you typically host stage time?
Yeah, our favorite place is 3 of Strong. They kind of like close down the bar for us and have just our stage time there. The bar's open. People are having fun. Sometimes we're outside practicing a little scene before we put it on for the rest of the room. Just screaming screaming the dialogue out into the streets of Portland makes for a really fun night.
One thing that I've really loved about it is that we nobody knows the scene before they arrive. If they want to participate, we assign them a number when they walk through the door, and that's the group that they're going to be in. They go with their group. They have a half an hour to assign the roles and read through the snippet, and then we come back and we all perform for each other. And so it allows for a lot of silliness and a lot of sometimes the intention of your character is not clear at the beginning and you get thrown a curveball halfway through reading the script in front of people. And it encourages the play, I think, and the looseness and lessens the expectations and the anxiety, hopefully, for people.
Absolutely. I think it's such an interesting thing where it feels like a blurring of lines between artist development, audience development, and community development. Like it's all mushed together. And I love that idea because it's just an interesting way. I also feel the same way about, our live events is sort of trying to mush all of that together into one place. What lessons have you learned perhaps on a deeper level about when you do engage with sort of wild plays? Like, is there a learning like that happens about, oh, you know what? I didn't realize about this play, about the way this play could be performed. Like any specific examples that you could highlight in terms of discovery?
Mm. I think every time we watch someone else, we're like, ooh, that's the really fun part is like seeing different people's take on something. And then it would be fun. Sometimes we don't always have the time, but either switching up roles or giving a little direction to try a different way. I like that.
I love that. I think we could sort of switch over and sort of talk about, your actual season so far. So far you've done the Larryman Project, What You Leave, Men on Boats, and then of course upcoming we have Lizzie. And so these productions seem wildly different on the surface. And so when you're building a season, what are you actually looking for? Like, is there a connective tissue? Should there be a connective tissue? And so anybody want to take that?
I mean, I would say at least for this season, I think one of the things that I see is like the connective tissue is looking at casting. One of the things that really, I mean, Men in Boats is just, it is the story of cis white male explorers, and those are not the people, the actors that are cast. And so it's, looking at the characters in the casting and telling the story from a very different perspective. And that was also one of the things that I liked about Lizzie is that it is a play they're a musical, there are 4 roles, all women. That is not something that we see a lot of shows, especially musicals that are just women. And not only is the show just women, but the age of the characters at this point of when this happened in Fall River and Lizzie Borden's life, they're middle-aged women. They're middle-aged women that are playing leads, that are playing roles that are independent and separate from the caregiver, the auntie, the mother. And I think that is something that I thought was really important, is looking at the characters and the type of people that can play these characters and bringing that to the forefront, and is things that we don't really see a lot of in the theater that we see now.
Yeah, I hear that. There's two levels. It's the cast we don't typically see on a stage, right? Presenting a piece of work that is different. I think back on our conversation with Jasmine Joshua, they them, who was the founder of Reboot Theater Company out in Seattle, and their work is all about genderqueer representations, particularly of how they got started was a genderqueer version of 1776. They didn't change a single thing. They didn't move a single thing. They didn't move a single word because that's how copyrights go. But that was their all-female production of 1776. And it landed and it hit. And this was years before Hamilton came to the forefront. And I think there is that sort of perspective that's offered as a result of that. On the flip side with Lizzie, I think there's also characters that aren't typically showcased within that sort of story. And so I do find that, fascinating. And so is that a question that you find yourself asking when you're reading scripts? So you're like, who is this speaking to? Is this a story that is typical?
Definitely.
I think it's from yeah, and I think also as we talked through the various play submissions and kind of how they went together as a season, the number one thing I would say is who is this speaking? Who is this speaking to? As you said, and also is this something I've seen on stage recently? Not necessarily like obviously we don't want to do the same literal play, but is that perspective, is that take on something that we have seen Lyric do or Mad Horse do recently? And I think for Men on Boats in particular, or at least what I'm thinking of currently is the idea of it's all cis white men characters, and the writer wrote in these can be played by absolutely anybody except a cis white man. And so the idea, the flexibility of casting that leaves, and the kind of ability for non cis white men and the privilege that they just inherently are familiar with and live in, can we see and watch other bodies take that privilege and play with it? And but I mean, it's based off of a journal of the explorer, and so these are coming from real thoughts and opinions that he had, and as he journeyed through this exploration, and but yet we're seeing diverse, non-adventuresome 1865 men reading these words, which I'm excited to see that come to life with our director Whit Brown, who I'm also incredibly excited to work with.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It sort of raised a question for me, which is, has there been a play where you've read and go, you know what, this actually is a great play, but it does not speak to our community. It does not, we don't find this to be a second story play. Like if you were to name a play, would there be something that would come to the surface and say, even though it's a lovely play, it's not for us?
I don't know if there is like one that's come up at least as a board discussion that we considered or wanted. I mean, for me, because I'm a musical theater nut job, I like any of the big productions like that are just like musical theater camp and fun, that are joyful to watch, but are not, they're just bringing joy, really. And they're also massive productions that we would never be able to afford the
Someday.
rights to.
If,
Yeah, maybe someday. Yeah.
So
yeah.
donors out there, if you're
Mhm.
listening to this, please
Right.
donate to Second Story so they can afford whatever play they want to do. Yeah, amazing. So, obviously, yeah,
Just a
go
little
ahead.
to Rachel's thing is like a giant musical, like a mainstream one, usually probably not a second story production. We're probably not going to do like Titanic or
Something rotten.
yeah. Anywho, that's all I had to say. Sorry, Josh, I cut you off.
Well, sadly, Cats the Jellicle Ball just closed. So,
Ugh.
if you do want to bring it to life,
God.
I was so upset when I heard that.
I was
Mm.
ragging on Cats with, a conversation with Brian Allen, and I felt super bad because I was like, I actually think their new production is really exciting. And then they closed, and I was heartbroken because they've won quite a bit of awards for the way they've
I'm
revisited it.
so sad I missed it.
What I'm saying is perhaps bring back Cats so I feel redeemed a little bit.
But we like that show.
Oh, you do love that show.
Yeah. It was the first professional musical I ever saw here in Portland, actually, as like a second grade child. And we somehow got second row orchestra seats, and Rum Tum Tugger sat on my dad's lap, and he was mortified. And I love that show.
I mean,
For that reason.
I believe it was my first like real Broadway production as well. And I was a kid and I sat in the third row and I went, this is cool. But really that sort of floating lift was cooler for me. That was the thing that I got into, not the
Fair.
actual Cats themselves.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
Yeah.
Pivoting into sort of like, obviously your season selection is all about community and care. I want to sort of jump into how that shapes the rehearsal room itself. And so, what kind of rehearsal room are you trying to build with those values in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for myself, it is really important to create a space, to create a container for where everyone can show up as their full selves. And it's not something you have to just drop at the door when you walk in. Like, show up as you. That's going to inform all of the work that you're doing, and creating space for that. And at the same time, making sure that we all are here in this space together. I like to set in the very first rehearsal. I like to go through like community norms. What do folks need in order to feel like they can bring their full selves to rehearsal, in order to feel like they are safe enough to play and experiment and make mistakes and try again. And so that we are all on the same page with what everyone else needs to make sure that we're really, really creating a space for each other. And to also, I also like to do a grounding exercise at the beginning. So we're all really present and in the moment, so that, yes, you are bringing everything with you into the rehearsal room. And also we are here moment now. Let us be present. Let's acknowledge where we are, be thankful for where we are and how we've gotten here, and then create and play together. Make mistakes, have fun, and really support each other. And one of the other exercise that I also like to do is just at the start, quick check-in to see where you're at, but then also doing a body check-in. Sometimes even if the play is not one that would require a lot of physicalness or would require an intimacy coordinator, you might want to, while you're rehearsing a scene, you might have the impulse to touch someone's shoulder. And that might not be okay for that person that day. And just because it was okay for them yesterday does not mean that it's okay for them today. And so starting each rehearsal, not only with a check-in of this is where I am at today, but this is where my body is at today. This is what feels safe and good for me and my body today. And that could change tomorrow. So that we're really making sure that everyone is fully present, feel like they can be fully present, and feel like they are really creating together and building that space to just fully be themselves.
I love that as a company, you're also intentionally protecting bodies as they enter the rehearsal room, as well as considering, what kind of stories that those bodies need to tell in that moment. Can you think of a moment where perhaps, someone in rehearsal, and we don't have to name names, but spoke up and the process became stronger for it? Like anything specific, perhaps, that might jump out at you?
We just had a fundraiser, kind of a cabaret type variety show. We had this lineup and people were kind of talking about it, or like someone in the company was talking about it at rehearsal of another show that she was doing. And someone spoke up. So I guess this doesn't really mean in rehearsal space, but somebody did speak up when she was talking about this and said, not sure if that's appropriate for that individual to be performing that particular
Singing that song.
Yeah. And we brought it to the board and we said, let's nix the number. Like, that is very valid. We see now, we understand, we're glad so-and-so said something. And we just, without question, adjusted the program. And we said from the beginning, we always want to be receptive to the things people that make people uncomfortable, and things that we can improve and be more welcoming and inclusive, if you will.
I love that idea of how reactive you were, because a lot of times, things get stuck in committee, right, so to speak. And, there's an endless conversation. There's a lot of hand wringing. But to be able to sort of jump in and, support a community member who is feeling perhaps struggling with something, I think, or at least highlighted a potential issue or a potential point of criticism that you have experienced later, I think that's a powerful thing to do. Pivoting to the fun stuff. I want to talk to you, Ian Mayer, because you'll be directing Lizzie. And so what excites you about bringing this piece to Maine audiences?
First, that I don't think it's been done in the southern Maine area. So that's really exciting, bringing something new that folks haven't seen before. And also, I just love the music. It's kind of like this punk rock musical, and I think that's also a genre of musical that is not really done a lot in the area. So I'm very excited about that. I had talked, a little bit about the casting, and how I think that is something that a show with that kind of casting is not necessarily something that's done a lot either. So I'm really excited to show that middle-aged women can be the leads that are not mothers, caregivers, aunties interested in men. Like, they can just be there in and of themselves. And then just I'm fascinated by how the Lizzie Borden story and the extent of how it has been mythologized within our culture and our society, and what that says about our society, given, that she was acquitted, she was determined innocent. But yet this myth has persisted, and that is something that I'm really interested in exploring with this show about, what does that say about our society that we just are not willing to let this go.
I'm excited to see it, and I trust that it's in great hands. I'm also excited to see Men on Boats in particular, because the non-traditional casting is such a sort of fundamental aspect to that play. Looking beyond these individual productions, what do you hope audiences begin to recognize as the Second Story experience, in capitalist terms, the Second Story brand? Like, what is that thing that you hope that people latch onto with Second Story? Like, are there indicators here?
I would love for if people walked away from it, kind of the touching on the things we've talked about, like, ooh, that was thought provoking. I've never seen or heard anything like that. I feel heard. I feel like these people care. Um, Refreshed, maybe. People leaving refreshed.
I hope that Second Story can come across as genuine. That both the art that you're watching on stage, and while you're watching it, you can feel like you can be your authentic self processing what you're watching, whether that's to laugh at maybe not laugh lines, or get up and dance, or I hope that we can be a place where you feel like you can come and be yourself both on and off the stage, and discuss afterwards if you want to. Like, we're always kind of in the lobby after the show, and I've had so many wonderful discussions with the audience members of just what they're walking away with. They need to, like, decompress and talk about it, and I love having that reaction, even if they hated the show, which luckily has not been the case. But I think I want there to be openness to all of it.
Obviously that speaks to me, Rachel, about how important it is to sort of experience genuine connection and genuine experiences when you encounter a play. Thank you so much, all of you, for exploring how your philosophy shapes the work you make. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about what's next and what you're asking of your audiences, your donors, your volunteers, and your collaborators. You're listening to Forge Theater Labs, and we're talking to Second Story. We'll be right back. Want to get your brand in front of a passionate, creative, and engaged audience? Forge Theater Labs is looking for partners to sponsor this podcast and join us in bringing bold, innovative theater to life. If you'd like to place an ad right here, reach out to us at marketing@forgetheaterlabs.com. It's a simple, powerful way to support the arts while sharing your message with listeners who care about creativity and community. Again, that's marketing@forgetheaterlabs.com. Let's build something extraordinary together. Welcome back to Forge Theater Labs, and we've been talking to Second Story Theatre Company here in Portland, Maine. In this last segment, we talked a lot about how the philosophy shapes the work you make. And so I thought we'd sort of talk a little bit about something that we referenced earlier, which was this idea of collaboration. You know, you've had so many experiences where you've brought together different aspects of the community, whether it be through your community events, through stage time, through your different, initiatives, as well as the stage readings and productions. What have those experiences taught you about collaboration?
I've learned that, starting a board of a company and collaborating with, your friends, is awesome, but also challenging in its own way. It's good because we kind of do know each other's quirks and stuff and can communicate to each other really well. But it is really a heck of a lot of work to actually bring things to fruition.
So thank you, Jess, for that, sharing that.
Mhm.
You know, is there anything that we can sort of learn from perhaps how theater companies can strengthen one another? Because often it feels sometimes like a competitive space, but, what are different ways that theater companies can then work together?
I think that it is challenging the norm a little bit to not feel competition with other theater companies. I think the Portland community is really good about supporting each other in as far as just attending the different shows at different theaters. And I like and then reciprocating. But I think that when I see other shows in the community, it does nothing but inspire me or make me think about what I would have done differently with that material, or whether what a way different way I'd like to see that material done. I think it sparks conversation, it sparks new ideas. And I think if we can just lean into the fact that we inspire each other, and the more art you produce, the more art I'm going to produce. Um, and I love that idea, and I hope that our community can kind of lean more into that versus the old school way of feeling like we're competing for audiences or competing for show rights or uh, things. I think it's tricky, but I think we can learn more from each other and grow more with each other than the competition. Personally,
Thank you for that. We completely appreciate the need to sort of develop a community that is unified in producing a diverse range of work. Looking ahead, we've talked about the Larry Moore Project to stage time, from accessibility to leadership. And so this all points towards a long-term vision. And so, you know, after this next season, where do you imagine yourself headed? And anyone can take this question.
I hope we all stay together. I think we will. I think there's longevity in this group. But I hope that we um, continue to have this fire among us and continue to keep collaborating and talking about things. I mean, we love to have a postmortem. We love to have a board meeting. We love to have um, a brainstorm. So I think hopefully just strengthening all of that and then having the funds to build upon future seasons.
Mm, exciting, exciting.
Yeah, I'd love to see us continue to grow, expand in our community engagement. With events like Stage Time, like the Broadway karaoke that we did, getting community members involved. Community members outside of the company, getting them involved in our fundraising cabaret that we do, and just really continuing to make Second Story more than just a theater company, but a true community, not just for the theater community, but for the community at large.
Lowering the barrier, lowering the barrier to creativity and theater would be ideal.
Absolutely. I think all of those things are worthy missions, worthy and ambitious things to do. And I'm really excited to see where you head next. So
Creating third spaces.
fantastic. Sorry. I heard bird for a second and I was like, I now we've got another episode where we need to talk about birds. I'm lost. Thank you for sharing that. Third spaces. As we sort of wrap things up, things that you want to shout out, where can we see the next thing? When is Men on Boats? When is Lizzie? When can we see that?
Auditions for Men on Boats are next weekend, actually. You can sign up via our website for a slot.
And when does that go up?
That is at the beginning of November.
Well, absolutely. We'll be sure to reference your website. Please keep in mind that by the time this episode airs, the auditions will have passed. So I'm so sorry, folks.
Right.
That will not be the case. And Lizzie.
Yes.
Yeah, after that.
Lizzie. So we are just now, starting to work on getting all of that put together. So there will be information coming out soon about community events that we'll be doing to help support and raise funds for Lizzie. So be on the lookout for that. I mean, it'll be on our socials, it'll be on our website. And then we're hoping to have auditions in November. So again, we'll be sure to blast that everywhere. So just be on the lookout for all the Second Story stuff to get all the information.
And where can we follow you on socials?
So we are on, oh gosh, I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm hardly ever on social media. I'm going to leave that to
we are most active on Instagram, where you can follow us at Second Story TC. And that is also our website, secondstorytc.org.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for sharing. You can find more about them on our website. You can also sort of read their bios, and in the show notes, we'll be sure to link to all these different places. Thank you, Second Story. Tonight we talked about productions, rehearsal rooms, leadership, accessibility, birds, bird spaces, maybe third spaces, and community. At the heart, though, I think, we're just talking about who theater is for. And I think your company isn't answering that question with a mission statement alone. You're answering it with the stories that you choose, the spaces that we find you in, and the communities you invite into the room. And so if y'all are resonating with what we're discussing tonight, please go out and find Second Story. Go support them. The best way to become part of that story is simple. Experience the work, bring someone with you, and continue the conversation long after the curtain falls. Thank you, everyone. This is Forge Theater Labs, and we'll catch you next time.
This episode was hosted by Joshua N Hsu with post-production by Sam Rapaport.